Well, I think the first advice is don't do Scrum. I think go with Kanban at first. Scrum requires a lot of discipline, and there is a lot of arbitrariness in the process. If you sort of decide that your sprints, your iterations are going to be 2 weeks long, you're then sort of forced to chunk your stories so that they can fit within that iteration, and that can be a difficult thing to do because it's not necessarily obvious where to actually split those stories up. It also sort of creates bottlenecks around the delivery or completion of those sprints. It also requires discipline to sort of stop the production line if you don't meet your definition of done and do that retrospective and that sort of thing. So Scrum sounds good, but talking to a lot of our customers who try Scrum, it's very hard to actually implement well.
Okay.
Whereas Kanban seems to be a process that people can adjust to a lot more easily. It is much more flexible, and the discipline is part of the process by the actual limits that you place on how much work can be in each stage.
Very good.
It's not dependent on human beings to actually play the role of policeman and police that.
Right, so if you haven't started, don't start. Okay, good.
Well, if you're wanting to move to Agile, then I would skip Scrum and look at Kanban first.
And then the second advice?
Well, the second advice is don't believe that developers can't do a good job of testing. They can. And we've deliberately did not hire enough testers to test everything. So our process was very much around QA engineers looking at the stories that were in the backlog, determining which ones were the most important or which ones that were the most riskiest, and sort of signing themselves up to test those stories. But then also saying for the other stories, well, they can still be worked on. They can be tested by developers, and we can provide additional services that will allow those developers to test those effectively, whether it's through training, consultation, pairing, those sorts of things. And that's proved very effective for us.
Very good, very good. And final one, if you have one?
The final one, I suppose to sort of round it out, is with automation. Again, automation is very important to us, but it's also costly in terms of maintenance.
It's not simple, right? Rate of change, you got to deal with that, and the maintenance of the rate of change is just costly.
That's right. So some people mistake Agile for no planning, which is not the case. I think you need to think very hard about what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. And that applies even more so for automation. It's very easy to get started and start automating things and feel that you're achieving something as you're sort of getting these tests running. It's when those tests start to fail and the maintenance costs start to kick in that you can start to feel the consequences of poor decisions. So being able to do that thinking up front, to plan those out, and to make sure that you're testing at the right level for whatever it is that your value you're trying to achieve.
In other words, automation is the must, but by doing so, you really have to thinking about the cost, the risks, and think through about how to implement it effectively so that you get the most efficiency out of that.
Correct.
Really,